As I stepped off the bus, the familiar scent of damp earth and pine hit me like a wave, pulling at the edges of my memory. Maplewood had always been a small dot on the map of my life, one I thought I'd left behind for good. Yet here I was, standing on the cracked pavement of Main Street, the same street I had walked as a child, but everything felt different. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that tangled with the remnants of dusk. The buildings whispered secrets of a time I barely remembered. The old diner still stood, its neon sign flickering as if it were winking at me. I could almost hear the laughter of my childhood friends echoing from the past. But nostalgia was a double-edged sword, and as I glanced around, a sense of unease crept into my chest. The residents of Maplewood moved about with a wary vigilance, their eyes darting away as I made my way down the street. It was as if they could sense my presence, and they didn't like it one bit. "Hey there, stranger," a voice called out, breaking through my reverie. I turned to see Mr. Harris, the town's unofficial historian and my neighbor from years ago, standing outside his bookstore. His face was lined with age, but his eyes sparkled with recognition. "Mr. Harris," I replied, forcing a smile. "It's been a long time indeed." He stepped closer, his brow furrowing as he scrutinized my expression. "What brings you back to Maplewood?" "I came to see the old place. Just needed a change of scenery, I guess." My words felt hollow even as I spoke them. The truth was that I was drawn back by something I couldn't quite articulate. A feeling, perhaps, a pull that felt like a thread tethering me to the past. Mr. Harris nodded slowly, his gaze drifting down the street as if he were searching for something hidden. "Be careful, my friend. This town has seen its share of darkness." "Darkness?" I echoed, curiosity piqued. He hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to overhear. "You know about the disappearances?" I shook my head, a chill creeping down my spine. "I've heard whispers." "What happened?" He lowered his voice. "Years ago, a little girl named Lily vanished from this town, just disappeared without a trace. Some say you can still hear her laughter if you listen closely enough." "Laughter?" I frowned, trying to process the weight of his words. "What do you mean?" "The townsfolk believe her spirit lingers here, searching for closure. It's a legend now, but there are those who say it's more than just a story." He stepped back, as if the very mention of it unsettled him. "I can't discuss it further. Just remember, some things are better left buried." With that, he turned, leaving me standing there with an uneasy feeling curling in my stomach. The laughter of a child echoed faintly in my ears, and I shook my head, trying to dispel the unsettling notion. This was a small town with old stories, nothing more. Deciding to distract myself, I made my way to the local cafe, which had been a staple in my youth. The bell above the door jingled softly as I entered, and the warmth of the place wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. The familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of pastries, pulling me in. I found a corner table, hoping to blend into the background while I gathered my thoughts. As I sipped my coffee, I noticed a group of locals seated nearby, their hushed conversations punctuated by nervous laughter. I strained to hear snippets of their dialogue, but it quickly turned into a jumble of whispers. Something was off in the air, a tension that hummed beneath the surface. "Can you believe she's back?" one woman said, her voice laced with disbelief. "Yeah, but they say she shouldn't have come back," another replied, glancing around. "Not with everything that happened." I felt a prickle of anxiety at their words. Was I the subject of their conversation? What had I stumbled into? Just then, the door swung open, and an elderly man shuffled in, his cane tapping rhythmically against the floor. It was Mr. Thompson, another familiar face from my childhood. He caught my eye and approached with a warm smile. "Look who it is!" he exclaimed, his voice booming despite his frail frame. "You've come back to us, have you? Mr. Thompson." "It's good to see you," I replied, forcing my voice to sound cheerful. "Just visiting for a bit." He nodded knowingly, his eyes sparkling with an inexplicable wisdom. "Best be careful, though. This town's got secrets, and some folks don't take kindly to outsiders poking around. I'll keep that in mind, I said, trying to sound nonchalant. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. You ever hear the story about Lily? Just snippets. I admitted, my heart racing. What's the story? Oh, it's a tragic one. Lily was a sweet little girl, full of life. One day she just vanished. No one could find her. Some say she's still here, trapped between worlds. You can hear her laughter if you listen closely. His eyes darkened, and he glanced over his shoulder. But it's not just a tale, you know? It's a warning. Why a warning? I asked, my curiosity deepening. Because some things happen in this town that should never see the light of day. He paused, his expression grave. Just be careful, young one. Sometimes the past has a way of catching up with you. With that, he shuffled away, leaving me feeling more unsettled than ever. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the chill that had settled in my bones. The cafe was becoming stifling, the air thick with unspoken fears. I needed to clear my head. After finishing my coffee, I decided to visit the town library, a place that had always felt like a sanctuary to me. The wooden doors creaked as I pushed them open, and the familiar scent of old books enveloped me. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers along the spines of forgotten tomes, each one a portal to a different world. As I made my way to the back of the library, I found a small reading nook bathed in warm sunlight. I settled into an armchair, hoping to find some peace among the pages of history. Hours passed as I lost myself in stories of the past, but the nagging feeling of being watched lingered in the back of my mind. Eventually, I decided to search through the archives, hoping to unearth something about Lily's disappearance. The librarian, a kind woman named Mrs. Jenkins, offered assistance, her eyes lighting up with interest. Ah, Lily, such a tragic story, she sighed. She was adored by everyone. You should check the local newspapers from that time. They might have something. I nodded, grateful for her help. We spent the next hour sifting through dusty boxes and fading clippings, but every mention of Lily sent a shiver down my spine. The articles were filled with hope turning to despair as the search for her continued, but no answers ever surfaced. Then, amidst the yellowed pages, I stumbled upon a small article that caught my eye. It described a gathering of townsfolk, discussing the mysterious laughter that had been heard in the woods surrounding Maplewood. I felt my heart race as I read about the strange occurrences that followed Lily's disappearance. Fires, accidents, and more children going missing. Is there something wrong? Mrs. Jenkins asked, noticing my expression. No, it's just, this is all so strange, I replied, forcing a smile. Thank you for your help. As I left the library, the weight of the town's history pressed heavily on my shoulders. The whispers of the past echoed in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being drawn into something far darker than I had anticipated. The laughter of a child lingered in the air, a haunting reminder that some stories were never truly over. I stepped outside, the sun setting on the horizon, casting a golden glow over Maplewood. But as the light faded, so did the warmth. The temperature dropped, and the shadows stretched ominously around me. I felt a chill run down my spine, and I quickened my pace towards the bus station, eager to leave this unsettling place behind. But deep down, a part of me knew I wouldn't be able to escape the pull of Maplewood. A thread was weaving itself tighter around my heart, and no matter how much I wanted to deny it, I was bound to uncover the secrets hidden within its depths. The laughter echoed once more, a distant sound that seemed to beckon me back, urging me to listen, to remember. As I finally arrived in Maplewood, the familiar streets greeted me, yet they felt oddly alien. The memories of my childhood came flooding back, but they were tainted by an overwhelming sense of dread. The quaint little town, which once felt like a safe haven, now seemed shrouded in an unsettling atmosphere. The air was thick with unspoken words, and the glances from the locals were laden with suspicion. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that my presence stirred unease among the residents who had long ago adapted to the silence that seemed to permeate their lives. Determined to make sense of the changes, I wandered into a local cafe, the same one I used to frequent as a kid. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mixed with the scent of baked goods brought a bittersweet nostalgia. I spotted an old familiar face behind the counter, Mr. Harris, the cafe owner. He looked up at me, his eyes widening with recognition before settling into a cautious smile. "Is that really you, Alex?" he asked, wiping his hands on his apron. "It's been a while, Mr. Harris," I replied, trying to sound lighthearted, though an undercurrent of unease ran through my voice. As we exchanged pleasantries, I sensed a change in his demeanor whenever I mentioned my reason for being back in town. "I'm here to look into some old stories, the disappearances," I ventured cautiously. At the mention of the word disappearances, his face paled. He glanced around the cafe as if expecting someone to overhear us. "You should be careful with that. Some things are better left in the past," he muttered, his voice low and shaky. "Why? What happened?" I pressed, sensing that he was holding something back. He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. "You'll hear the stories, but just remember, not every tale is meant to be uncovered. The laughter of a child can sometimes lead you to places you don't want to go." His cryptic words lingered in the air, and I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. I had to know more, but I could see that he was unwilling to share any further details. After finishing my coffee, I left the cafe with a heavy heart, the unease only growing. The library, a dusty old building that had seen better days, awaited me next. I hoped to find answers among the yellowed pages of history. The moment I stepped inside, the musty smell enveloped me, almost as if the books were exhaling memories. I made my way to the archives, where I spent hours sifting through old newspapers and records, searching for any mention of the disappearances that had haunted this town for decades. Then, I found it, a faded article about a little girl named Lily who had vanished without a trace. The details were sparse, but the name struck a chord deep within me. I felt drawn to her story, and as I continued reading, my heart raced. The article mentioned a peculiar laughter that echoed through the woods the night she disappeared. "Lily?" I murmured to myself, the name resting heavily on my tongue. The laughter, it echoed in my mind, a sound that lingered just out of reach. I had heard whispers of that laughter before, but it had always seemed like a distant fairy tale, nothing more than a ghost story meant to frighten children. Now it felt like a warning. Days turned into a blur as I attempted to dig deeper into Lily's disappearance. After multiple visits to the library and endless conversations with locals, I finally managed to gain access to Lily's diary, which had been preserved in a box within the library's secure section. The anticipation bubbled within me as I held the key that unlocked the secrets of a lost child's life. As I opened the box, the faint scent of old paper filled the air, and I carefully pulled out the diary. The cover was worn, and the pages were yellowed with age. I could hardly contain my excitement as I sat at a nearby table, the diary resting before me like a treasure waiting to be uncovered. The first pages detailed Lily's daily life, her joys and fears, and her innocent musings about the world around her. But as I read on, the tone shifted. There was a haunting entry that sent chills down my spine. "Today, I heard the laughter again. It was beautiful, but it felt wrong. Mama says I should ignore it, but I can't. It feels like a secret calling me." My heart raced as I read those words. It was more than just a memory, it was a premonition. Lily described a series of tragic events that followed the laughter. A devastating fire that destroyed a neighbor's home, a child who went missing, and whispers of a darkness that crept over the town. The diary was not just a record of her life. It was a warning etched in time. As I continued flipping through the pages, a sense of urgency gripped me. I needed to know more about the other children who had disappeared, the families who had suffered, and the town that seemed to hold its breath in fear. My determination grew stronger, and I realized that I couldn't do this alone. That's when Noah, an old friend from my childhood, reached out. "You're back in town, right? I've heard some things. I want to help," he said, his voice filled with concern and eagerness. "Noah, I'm glad you're here. I found Lily's diary, and it's worse than I thought. There's something sinister about her laughter," I explained, the weight of my findings pressing down on me. "Let's figure this out together," he replied, his eyes reflecting the same urgency I felt. We shared a bond that time had not severed, and I knew I could trust him. As we set off to gather more information, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were stepping into a web of secrets woven tightly by the townspeople. Each conversation with a local only deepened my discomfort. Many were unwilling to talk, their eyes darting away as if the mere mention of the disappearances was taboo. "Why won't they speak?" I muttered in frustration during one of our attempts to interview a couple of residents. "There's something they're hiding." Noah nodded, his brow furrowed. "It's like they're protecting something or someone. We need to dig deeper, Alex." After hours of fruitless inquiries, we finally found a glimmer of hope in the form of Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman known for her reclusiveness. She had lost a daughter years ago, and her sorrow was palpable. I felt drawn to her, the kind of pull that suggested she held pieces of the puzzle we were trying to solve. When we arrived at her home, the atmosphere was thick with an oppressive silence. The old house creaked as we knocked, and after what felt like an eternity, Mrs. Thompson opened the door. Her eyes were clouded with years of grief, but there was a flicker of something else: recognition. "Come in, dear," she said softly, ushering us inside. The walls were adorned with photographs of a smiling girl, her daughter, whose presence was still felt in the air. "Mrs. Thompson, we're trying to gather information about the disappearances." I began, my heart racing. "We believe Lily's story is connected to the others." Her expression changed instantly. The warmth faded, replaced by a guarded weariness. "It's not a story you should be digging into. The past should stay buried. We need to know what happened," Noah pressed gently. "Your daughter's disappearance. It might help us understand." She hesitated, glancing at the photographs as if they were ghosts coming to life. "I lost my daughter on a night filled with laughter," she whispered, her voice breaking. But it wasn't a happy sound. It was a warning. I felt the weight of her words settle heavily in the room. "Please, Mrs. Thompson, we need to understand," I implored. With a deep breath, she began to share fragments of that fateful night. She heard the laughter, just like Lily did. I told her to ignore it, but she ran out anyway. That was the last time I saw her. The room was filled with a heavy silence as her pain washed over us, a reminder of the darkness that lingered in Maplewood. I glanced at Noah, who was equally moved, both of us acutely aware that we were treading on ground where sorrow had taken root. As we prepared to leave, I heard it, the faint echo of laughter drifting through the open window. It sent a shiver down my spine, and I exchanged a worried glance with Noah. We stepped outside, the laughter fading into the distance, replaced by an unsettling silence. I knew then that the town held more than just stories. It held secrets that demanded to be uncovered, and I was determined to find the truth, no matter the cost. As I stepped into Maplewood, an overwhelming wave of nostalgia washed over me, intertwining with a nagging sense of dread that clawed at the edges of my mind. The streets, though unchanged, felt heavy with unspoken secrets, and the air was thick with an almost palpable tension. The townsfolk moved about with a cautiousness that made me acutely aware of their watchful eyes. I could feel their stares, lingering and assessing, as if I was an outsider intruding into a world that had long since grown weary of visitors. I found myself drawn to a small, quaint cafe that stood at the corner of Main Street. The familiar scent of coffee mixed with the faint aroma of baked goods provided a momentary comfort as I entered. The bell above the door chimed softly, but the warmth of the atmosphere felt distant against the chill creeping down my spine. I spotted an old acquaintance, Mr. Harris, hunched over a newspaper at the counter, his white hair a stark contrast to the dark wood surrounding him. "Hey, Mr. Harris," I called out, forcing a smile as I approached. "It's been a while." He looked up, and for a brief moment, recognition flickered in his eyes before being replaced by a shadow of unease. "Ah, it's you. I didn't expect to see you back here." His voice was shaky, and he quickly glanced around as if ensuring no one was eavesdropping. I took a seat across from him, trying to lighten the mood. "Just passing through. I've been hearing some strange things about this place. What's the story with the disappearances? At the mention of the word, Mr. Harris stiffened, his eyes darting nervously. You shouldn't dig into things best left alone, he muttered, lowering his voice. People around here, they don't take kindly to nosy outsiders. Come on, you can't just leave me hanging like that. I pressed, leaning in closer. I heard something about a child's laughter, something sinister. He shivered slightly, his gaze dropping to his coffee cup. The laughter of a child. It's a legend, one that brings nothing but trouble. Legend? I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? He shook his head, looking up briefly, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and regret. It's not just a story, it's a warning. You should leave it be. With that, he abruptly stood up, leaving some coins on the table before hurrying out of the cafe. I sat there, the unease settling deeper within me. What was it about this place that made even the bravest souls tremble? I finished my coffee, the bitter taste lingering in my mouth, and decided to head to the library. I needed answers, and the whispers of the past were calling me. The Maplewood Library was an old building, its facade adorned with creeping vines and faded paint. Inside, the musty scent of aged paper and leather-bound books enveloped me as I wandered through the dimly lit aisles. The silence was almost deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of pages turning. I approached the librarian, an elderly woman who peered at me over her glasses with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. I'm looking for information on local history, particularly any records of disappearances, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She studied me for a moment, lips pursed. Disappearances? She echoed, as if testing the weight of the word. You might want to check the archives in the back. Thanking her, I made my way to a small room filled with dust-laden boxes and stacks of yellowing newspapers. I began to sift through the files, my fingers skimming over names and dates until one particular headline caught my eye. Local girl Lily vanishes without a trace. As I delved deeper into the articles, I discovered details about Lily, a bright little girl with a laugh that could fill a room. My heart raced as I read about her disappearance, the search parties, and the whispers of a haunting laughter that echoed through the woods where she was last seen. It was as if the mention of her name awakened something dormant within me. Lily? I murmured under my breath, and the name echoed back to me like a ghostly refrain. The laughter, it was all connected. I could feel it in my bones. After hours of research, I felt a growing urgency to gather more information about the other children who had gone missing. It was then that I remembered Noah, a childhood friend who once lived in Maplewood. Perhaps he would be willing to help me uncover the truth behind these tragic events. I pulled out my phone and sent him a quick message, explaining my situation and asking if we could meet. To my relief, he replied almost immediately, suggesting queuing up at the local diner. I could feel the weight of anxiety lifting slightly. I needed someone to help me navigate the truths that lay buried in this town. When I arrived at the diner, the bell above the door jingled, and the familiar smell of fried food and coffee filled my nostrils. I spotted Noah in a booth at the back, his sandy hair slightly disheveled as he waved me over. "Hey, it's good to see you," he said, his smile warm but his eyes betraying a hint of concern. "How's it going? What's all this about disappearances?" I slid into the seat opposite him, lowering my voice. "It's more complicated than I thought. I spoke to Mr. Harris, and he mentioned something about a child's laughter. It seems to be tied to Lily's disappearance and possibly others." Noah's expression shifted. I could see the memories flashing behind his eyes. That laughter, it's something I've heard before. It's like a ghost in the night. My sister used to talk about it when we were kids. She'd say it was the last thing she heard before she fell asleep. Did she ever mention what it meant? I pressed, feeling the urgency rise within me. He shook his head, a frown deepening on his brow. No, just that it felt wrong, like a warning. I always thought she was being silly, but now, his voice trailed off, and I could see he was wrestling with his own memories. "We need to talk to people in town. Someone has to know more about this. They can't keep hiding it forever." I suggested, feeling a determination swell within me. Yeah, but I've tried before, Noah replied, worry etching his features. Most people just shut down. It's like they're afraid to say anything. Then we'll just have to find someone willing to talk. Maybe we should start with the older folks, those who've lived here long enough to remember. Noah nodded, though his apprehension lingered. All right, let's start with Mrs. Thompson. She's been living in that old house at the end of Maple Street for ages. People say she's a bit eccentric, but she might know something. With a plan in place, we left the diner and made our way toward Mrs. Thompson's house. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the pavement. As we approached her home, a shiver of unease crept up my spine. The house loomed ahead, its windows like dark eyes watching us as we approached. Knocking on the weathered door, I felt a mixture of anticipation and fear. When the door finally creaked open, Mrs. Thompson stood before us, her frail frame draped in a shawl that seemed to swallow her whole. Her eyes narrowed as she took in our presence. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice raspy and cautious. "Mrs. Thompson, we're looking for information about the disappearances in Maplewood," I said, trying to sound as respectful as possible. Her expression hardened. "You shouldn't be asking questions about that. It's better left in the past." "No, please," Noah interjected. "We just want to understand what happened. We need to know." A flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossed her face. "You don't know what you're asking for," she warned, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Some things are better left buried." "Please," I pressed, feeling desperation creep into my voice. "We know about Lily. She's connected to the laughter, isn't she? You must know something." Mrs. Thompson hesitated, her gaze flicking to the ground. "You have no idea what kind of darkness you're dabbling in. That laughter, it's a curse. You think you want to uncover the truth? You might not like what you find. Then help us understand," Noah urged, stepping closer. "We can't just let this continue. People are suffering." She sighed, a heavy weight settling on her shoulders. "Fine, but you need to understand that once you know, there's no going back." As she ushered us inside, I felt a chill ripple through me. Whatever secrets Mrs. Thompson held, they were buried deep, and I could sense that the laughter was just the beginning of something far more sinister. As rain-soaked streets of Maplewood mirrored my conflicted emotions as I stepped into the town I once called home, a wave of nostalgia washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by an unsettling heaviness that clung to the air. Each familiar corner, every old storefront, seemed cloaked in layers of suspicion and unspoken fears. The few townsfolk I encountered cast furtive glances in my direction, their eyes darting away as if I were a ghost from a forgotten past. I could feel their scrutiny, an invisible weight pressing down on my shoulders, amplifying my disquiet. I found myself wandering into a local cafe, the kind I used to frequent during my youth. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but even that comfort felt tainted. I spotted Mr. Harris, an old acquaintance, sitting in a corner booth, his brow furrowed in concentration as he stirred his coffee. As I approached, he looked up, and a flicker of recognition passed over his face. "James, is that you?" he asked, his voice tinged with surprise but also caution. "Yes, Mr. Harris. It's been a while," I replied, sliding into the seat opposite him. "I've come back to Maplewood to see how things have been. I've heard some troubling stories." He hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting someone to eavesdrop. "You shouldn't be here, James. There are things about this town, things you don't understand." "What do you mean?" I pressed, leaning in closer. "I've heard whispers about a child's laughter, a legend surrounding it. What happened to Lily?" At the mention of Lily's name, his expression darkened, and his hands trembled slightly as he set down his cup. "You should leave it alone. That laughter, it's not just a story, it's a warning." "Warning? What kind of warning?" I asked, frustration mingling with my curiosity. But he shook his head vigorously, his eyes wide with fear. "I can't talk about it. Just be careful, James. The town has its secrets, and some things are better left buried. His nervous demeanor only fueled my determination. After leaving the cafe, I headed straight to the town library, a place that once felt like a sanctuary for knowledge. Now it loomed before me like a mausoleum of forgotten stories. The musty smell of old books filled my lungs as I began combing through the archives, searching for anything related to the recent disappearances. Hours passed as I sifted through dusty records and yellowed pages. Finally, a name caught my eye: Lily Thompson. I felt a chill run down my spine as I read about her disappearance, her laughter echoing through the pages, haunting and ethereal. The more I read, the more I realized that the laughter wasn't just a ghostly memory. It was a harbinger of tragedy that loomed over the town. Lily heard the laughter the night she disappeared. I muttered to myself, my heart racing. What if it's connected to the others? Driven by urgency, I knew I needed to gather more information. As I contemplated my next steps, Noah, a local who had been watching my research from a distance, approached me. "I couldn't help but overhear you talking about Lily," he said cautiously. "If you're serious about finding out what happened, I want to help." "Are you sure?" I asked, surprised by his offer. "This is dangerous territory." Noah nodded, his expression resolute. "I've lived here my whole life. I've heard the stories, and I want the truth too." We agreed to meet the next day to begin interviewing other residents. But as night fell, a sense of dread enveloped me. The town seemed alive with a restless energy, and I often felt as if unseen eyes were watching me. It was during one of those restless moments that I decided to pay a visit to Mrs. Thompson, Lily's mother, who had become a recluse since her daughter's disappearance. I knocked on her door, my heart pounding, and after a long pause, she opened it just a crack. Her eyes, sunken and wary, studied me cautiously. "What do you want?" "Mrs. Thompson, I'm researching Lily's disappearance. I thought you might be able to help," I said gently. A flicker of recognition crossed her face, but it quickly faded. "You should leave the past in the past," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's too painful." "Please," I urged. "I need to understand what happened that night." She hesitated, then opened the door slightly wider, allowing me to step inside. The room was dark, filled with shadows and memories. "I lost my daughter," she said, her voice cracking. "You don't know what that feels like." "I can't imagine," I replied softly, "but maybe talking about it could help." "What do you remember from that night?" Her eyes filled with tears as she recalled the events. "She was playing outside, laughing, and then it stopped. I heard the laughter, but it turned into something else, something sinister. I ran out, but she was gone." "Did you hear the laughter again after that?" I pressed, sensing that there was more to her story. Mrs. Thompson looked away, her expression distant. "Sometimes I think I do. It haunts me, but I don't want to talk about it anymore." As I left her home, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding back crucial information. Just as I stepped outside, I heard it. A distant laugh, soft and playful, yet laced with an edge of malevolence. My heart raced, and I turned to Noah, who had been waiting for me nearby. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. He nodded, his brow furrowed with concern. "It sounded like a child." "Let's get out of here," I suggested, the chill of the night creeping into my bones. But as we walked away, the laughter echoed in the distance, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, the laughter replaying in my mind like a broken record. I needed answers, and I knew that Mrs. Thompson held the key to unraveling the mystery. I had to confront her again. The next day, I returned to her house, my resolve stronger than ever. I knocked firmly, and this time, she opened the door almost immediately. "What do you want now?" she asked, irritation mingling with fatigue. "I need you to tell me everything about the pact," I demanded, my voice firm. "What is it? What does it have to do with Lily?" Her face paled, and she stepped back as if my words had struck her. "You shouldn't speak of such things," she warned, her voice trembling. It's dangerous. Dangerous how? Pressed. I have to know. The town is hiding something, and I can't let it continue. With a resigned sigh, she finally relented. Fine, but you won't like what you hear. She glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, and then led me inside her home. Years ago, after Lily disappeared, the town elders made a pact. She began, her voice barely above a whisper. They believed that by appeasing the spirit of a child who died unjustly, they could protect the town from more tragedies. The laughter is a mark of that pact, a warning that we must never forget. I listened, captivated by her words. What kind of sacrifices did they make? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. Not sacrifices, offerings, she clarified, her gaze distant as if lost in memories. They believed that as long as they honored the spirit, it would keep the town safe. But it's a lie, James. The more we tried to keep it hidden, the more it demanded. What do you mean? I pressed, feeling the weight of her admission. Is Lily's spirit connected to this? She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Her laughter is both a blessing and a curse. It's a reminder of what we lost, but also a call for justice. The town has to face what it has done. Mrs. Thompson handed me an old, ornate key that she had been clutching tightly. This belonged to Lily. It might help you understand how to break the cycle, but be warned. The truth is dangerous, and it might not lead to the outcome you desire. As I left her house, clutching the key tightly, I felt both hopeful and terrified. The laughter echoed in my mind, more pronounced now, like a challenge. I had to confront whatever darkness loomed over Maplewood, but I was acutely aware that the journey ahead would be fraught with peril. The weight of the past was heavy, and I was determined to uncover its secrets, no matter the cost. As night fell in Maplewood, the air felt thick with an oppressive weight, a sense of foreboding that clung to my skin like a shroud. I stood in front of my small, dimly lit apartment, clutching the ancient key that Mrs. Thompson had given me. It felt heavy in my hand, as if it carried the weight of the secrets of the town. The wind howled gently, whispering through the trees and sending a shiver down my spine. I couldn't shake the feeling that the laughter of a child echoed faintly in the distance, a ghostly reminder of the horrors that lingered in this place. I glanced at Noah, who stood beside me with a determined look in his eyes. We had spent hours piecing together the fragments of Lily's story and the dark legacy of Maplewood. The ritual was to take place on the anniversary of her disappearance, a date that loomed closer with each passing moment. The thought of confronting the spirit of Lily sent a chill through me, but we knew we had to do it. The old park is just a few blocks away, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Are you ready for this? Noah nodded, his expression serious. We need to find out where the ritual needs to be done. We can't let them keep sacrificing children. This has to end. As we made our way to the abandoned park, memories of my childhood in Maplewood flooded back. I could see the joy of playing in those very fields, the laughter of children ringing in the air. But now, the park was overgrown with weeds and shadows, a haunting reminder of what it had become. As we approached the entrance, the air felt charged, almost electric. I could hear the rustle of leaves, the distant laughter that seemed to beckon me forward. Do you hear that? I asked, glancing at Noah. He nodded, his brow furrowed. It's getting louder, he replied, his voice trembling slightly. It's taunting us. We stepped cautiously into the park, the moonlight barely penetrating the thick canopy above. The laughter was unmistakable now, echoing around us, weaving through the trees like a ghostly thread. I felt a knot tightening in my stomach as I remembered Lily's story and the warnings in her diary. The laughter was not just a memory, it was a harbinger of tragedy. Look over there, Noah called, pointing toward a clearing. It was faint, but I could see something on the ground that resembled markings. We hurried toward it, the laughter growing more intense, almost frenzied. Upon reaching the clearing, we knelt down to inspect the ground. The earth was disturbed, forming a circular pattern that seemed deliberate. This has to be it, I said, tracing the lines with my fingers. This is where the ritual is supposed to happen. Noah frowned, his gaze drifting to the surrounding trees. But why here? Why this place? Maybe it's where they first lost her, I suggested, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. Or maybe it's where they made the pact. As we continued to examine the markings, the laughter abruptly stopped. An eerie silence enveloped us, and I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. What just happened? I whispered, glancing around nervously. I don't know, but something feels wrong, Noah replied, his eyes scanning the shadows. We should get back before. Before he could finish his sentence, the laughter erupted again, louder and more haunting than before. It felt as if the very air around us vibrated with its intensity. I looked at Noah, terror etched on his face, and we both stood up, ready to run. This isn't right, I said, my heart racing. We need to prepare for the ritual. We can't just leave it like this. Noah took a deep breath, steeling himself. You're right. We need to gather everything we can. We'll need candles, offerings, anything that could help us. I nodded, feeling a sense of urgency. Let's head back to my place. We can brainstorm what we need and gather supplies. As we hurried back through the park, the laughter faded into a soft echo, but the unease lingered. The closer we got to my apartment, the more I felt the weight of the impending ritual pressing down on me. The key hung heavy around my neck, a constant reminder of the burden we carried. Once inside, I paced the small living room while Noah rifled through my drawers, searching for anything that might aid us. What do we have? I asked, trying to focus my thoughts. Candles, matches, some old trinkets. We could use these as offerings, he said, holding up a small, tarnished bell. And maybe this could work as a focal point. I nodded, appreciating his resourcefulness. We should also write down some of the words from Lily's diary. If the spirit is tied to her story, we need to honor that. Noah looked at me, his expression grave. You really think we can do this? What if we can't appease her spirit? I felt a wave of doubt wash over me, but I pushed it aside. We have to try. For Lily, for all the other children. We can't let the cycle continue. As we prepared, the atmosphere in the apartment shifted. The faint sound of laughter returned, creeping into the corners of my mind. Felt like a challenge, a test of our resolve. I glanced at Noah, seeing the determination in his eyes mirrored my own fear. Whatever happens tonight, we face it together, I said, trying to instill a sense of courage. We can't let fear control us. With everything gathered, we moved into the night, armed with our supplies and a desperate hope. The moon hung high, casting a pale light over the park as we returned to the clearing. My heart raced with every step, and I could feel the weight of the key against my chest, pulsing with the energy of the night. As we set up our makeshift altar, I could sense the air thickening around us, charged with a powerful presence. The laughter swirled in the wind, a ghostly chorus urging us onward. Are you ready? I asked Noah, my voice steady despite the chaos in my mind. Ready as I'll ever be, he replied, his hands trembling slightly as he lit the candles. As the flames flickered to life, I opened the diary and began to read aloud. The words felt foreign on my tongue, heavy with history and sorrow. With each phrase, I could feel the atmosphere shift, the laughter fading into a somber silence. Lily, we're here for you, I called into the darkness, feeling a strange connection forming. We want to help you. We want to end the suffering. For a moment, there was only silence. I exchanged a glance with Noah, uncertainty hanging between us like a fragile thread. Just as doubt crept into my mind, the laughter returned, echoing around us, but this time it felt different. It was tinged with sadness, a longing for resolution. Lily, we know what they did to you, I continued, my voice stronger now. We're here to break the cycle. We won't let this happen again. Suddenly, the wind picked up, swirling around us, and the candles flickered violently. I could feel the air grow colder, the darkness deepening. The laughter twisted into a wail, a sound that chilled my very bones. Stay focused, Noah shouted, gripping my arm. Don't let it distract you. I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the moment. Lily, we're here. We're here to listen. As the winds howled, the shadows began to shift, swirling into a form that made my heart race. A figure emerged, translucent and ethereal, its eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and anger. It was Lily. "Why have you come?" Her voice echoed, a haunting melody that resonated in my chest. "Do you think you can save me? We want to help you find peace," I said, my voice trembling. "We want to end the pain this town has caused you." Lily's expression shifted, a flicker of hope crossing her face. "You think you can break the pact? You think they will let you?" "I don't know," I admitted, feeling the weight of despair settle in. "But we have to try. We can't let another child suffer like you did." As I spoke, the laughter grew louder, a cacophony of voices that seemed to rise from the very ground beneath us. The shadows danced around us, a chaotic whirlwind of emotions. "Do you hear them?" Lily whispered, her voice barely audible above the noise. "They are trapped here like me. The pact is stronger than you think." I glanced at Noah, determination igniting within me. "We have to confront the truth. We can't let fear control us any longer." With every ounce of courage I could muster, I shouted into the storm, "We refuse to be part of this cycle. We will not let fear dictate our actions any longer." The wind howled in response, the laughter transforming into a chorus of cries, as if the very spirits of the town were awakening to our challenge. The shadows around us began to shift, swirling violently, and I could feel the energy pulsing through the air. "Lily, help us!" I cried out, feeling the connection deepen. "Please, we need your strength to break this." For a moment, the chaos stilled. The night was heavy with an unsettling silence as Noah and I made our way through the winding streets of Maplewood. The air was damp, clinging to our skin like a second layer, and the streetlights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced along the cracked pavement. I could feel the weight of the town pressing down on us, a tangible force that seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't ready to hear. "Do you feel that?" I asked Noah, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. "It's like the whole town is holding its breath. Something's not right." As we approached the old park, memories of Lily's disappearance flooded my mind, intertwining with the eerie laughter that had haunted my thoughts since I arrived in Maplewood. The laughter echoed faintly in the distance, a haunting reminder of the unresolved tragedy that had cast a long shadow over this town. I couldn't shake the feeling that the residents were hiding something dark and dangerous. We stepped cautiously onto the park's grounds, the grass underfoot damp and uneven. My heart raced as I recalled the stories I had heard, the warnings from the townsfolk, the fearful glances exchanged when Lily's name was mentioned. We had to find the truth no matter the cost. "Let's just look around," I suggested, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Maybe we'll find something that can help us." Noah agreed, and we began to walk deeper into the park. The trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their branches twisting and turning in the wind. As we moved further in, I spotted a clearing up ahead, the moonlight spilling onto the ground like a spotlight. "Over there," I said, pointing. "Let's check it out." The clearing felt oddly still, an unnatural calm that sent chills down my spine. I knelt down, brushing away the leaves and debris, revealing a patch of earth that was darker than the surrounding soil. It looked as if something had been buried here, a secret buried deep, much like the town's past. "What do you think it is?" Noah asked, kneeling beside me. "I don't know, but it looks wrong," I replied, my gut twisting with unease. "We have to keep looking." As we continued our search, I felt the weight of the town's history pressing down on us. The laughter echoed again, this time louder, closer, and I shivered involuntarily. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. Noah nodded, his expression grave. "It's coming from over there." He gestured toward the edge of the park, where the trees thinned out, revealing an old playground, long forgotten and overrun by weeds. We approached cautiously, the laughter growing louder with each step. It was a child's laughter, innocent yet tinged with something sinister. "This doesn't feel right," I murmured, my heart racing. "Maybe we should turn back," Noah suggested, glancing nervously at the shadows that surrounded us. But something compelled me to move forward. "No, we need to find out what's happening here. It's the only way we can help." The playground loomed before us, rusted swings swaying in the breeze, creaking like old bones. The laughter echoed again, sharp and clear, sending a jolt of fear through me. I felt as if we were being watched, the very trees leaning in to eavesdrop on our every word. "Is this really where it happened?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I replied, swallowing hard. "This is where Lily was last seen." As we stepped onto the playground's cracked surface, a gust of wind swept through, carrying with it the faint sound of laughter. It was as if the very essence of the past was alive here, wrapping around us, pulling us deeper into its grip. "Do you think it's her?" Noah asked, glancing around nervously. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice trembling, "but we need to find out. We can't just ignore it." Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow darting between the trees. I turned sharply, but nothing was there. My heart raced. I felt a cold sweat forming on my brow. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What? See what?" Noah asked, his eyes wide with confusion. "There was someone, I stammered, my instincts screaming at me to run. "Maybe it was just a trick of the light," he suggested, though I could see the doubt in his eyes. "Maybe," I said, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. We had to push forward. We needed answers. As we moved further into the playground, I spotted a small, weathered slide, its paint peeling and faded. Beneath it, partially obscured by dirt and grass, was a small object glinting in the moonlight. "Look!" I exclaimed, rushing over to it. I knelt down and brushed away the dirt, revealing a small locket, intricately designed but tarnished with age. I opened it, my heart racing. Inside, there was a picture of a smiling little girl, her bright eyes staring back at me. "It's Lily," I breathed, recognizing her instantly. Noah leaned closer, his expression turning serious. "What does it mean? Why would it be here?" "I don't know, but it feels important," I said, clutching the locket tightly. "Maybe it's a clue." As I stood up, the laughter echoed again, clearer this time, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "We need to get out of here," Noah urged, glancing nervously at the trees. But before I could respond, a figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the moonlight. It was an elderly woman, her face lined with age and worry. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp and filled with authority. We both froze, caught off guard. I started, but she cut me off. "You shouldn't be here," she exclaimed, her eyes narrowing. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Who are you?" Noah asked, stepping protectively in front of me. "I'm Mrs. Thompson," she replied, her voice now softer but still laced with urgency. "And you need to leave this place. It's dangerous." "Dangerous how?" I pressed, curiosity overcoming my fear. "We're trying to find out what happened to Lily." Mrs. Thompson's expression shifted, a flicker of something, fear, perhaps, crossing her face. Lily's laughter. "It's not just a memory. It's a warning. You must not ignore it." "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling the weight of her words. "There's a reason the town keeps secrets," she said, her voice trembling. "You're not safe here. The laughter, it calls to the lost, and it doesn't take kindly to those who seek the truth." Noah and I exchanged worried glances, a sense of dread settling over us. "We can handle it," I asserted, though my voice wavered. "We need to know what happened." "No," Mrs. Thompson said firmly, stepping closer. "You don't understand. The town made a pact to keep the spirit at bay. If you disturb it, you'll unleash something you can't control." "What kind of pact?" Noah asked, his voice low. "The kind that requires a sacrifice," she replied, her eyes darkening. The kind that keeps the town safe at a terrible cost. My heart sank as I processed her words. A sacrifice? What does that mean for us? It means you need to leave, she insisted, panic rising in her voice. Now! Before we could respond, the laughter echoed again, louder and more insistent, wrapping around us like a shroud. I felt a sudden chill, the air thickening with a sense of foreboding. Mrs. Thompson, please, pleaded. We can't just walk away. We need to know. But she shook her head, fear etched on her face. You don't know what you're asking. The laughter is a warning. It wants to keep you here, to trap you in the cycle. You must resist it. As the laughter crescendoed, I felt a pull, a compulsion to stay, to uncover the truth at all costs. Noah, we can't leave now, I said, my voice trembling with determination. We have to confront this. No, Noah shouted, grabbing my arm. We need to go. But the moment hung heavy in the air, the laughter echoing around us, wrapping us in its chilling embrace. I stared at Mrs. Thompson, desperation flooding my veins. Tell us what we need to do. We can't let this continue. She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if sensing something lurking in the shadows. You must confront the spirit, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But be warned, the truth may not set you free. It could cost you everything. Before I could respond, the laughter grew deafening, drowning out my thoughts. The shadows around us deepened, swirling with a malevolent energy. I felt a sharp tug at my heart, a sense of inevitability washing over me. Run, Mrs. Thompson shouted, shoving us back. We turned, sprinting towards the edge of the park, the laughter trailing behind us like a shadow. It echoed in my mind. The night air hung heavy with an ominous silence as Noah and I approached the abandoned park. Shadows danced under the eerie glow of the moonlight, where the trees twisted like gnarled fingers reaching toward the heavens. Each step felt like an invitation to the unknown, and I could feel the weight of dread pulling at my chest. The laughter of the child, that haunting sound, echoed faintly in the distance, wrapping around me like a shroud. I shivered, glancing at Noah, who walked beside me, his expression a mix of determination and fear. Are you sure about this? Noah asked, his voice low and shaky. What if we can't confront whatever is out there? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. We have to, Noah. We need to understand what's happening in this town. We can't let Lily's memory fade away with the rest of those children. If there's a chance we can end this nightmare, we have to take it. Noah nodded, but I could see the uncertainty lingering in his eyes. I felt it too, a gnawing sense of impending doom that clung to me like a second skin. As we stepped into the park, the laughter grew louder, reverberating through the air, a joyful sound twisted by the weight of despair. It was as if the very spirit of the place was alive, mocking our efforts, daring us to proceed. Do you hear that? Noah whispered, halting in his tracks. His eyes darted around, scanning the shadows. Yes, I replied, my heart racing. It's coming from over there. I pointed toward a cluster of trees where the laughter seemed to originate, a ghostly sound that echoed from the depths of my memory. We moved cautiously, our footsteps muffled by the thick carpet of fallen leaves. The laughter morphed into a series of faint giggles, almost playful, but there was an undercurrent of sadness that made my skin crawl. I could feel the air thickening, almost as if we were intruding on a sacred space. The trees loomed over us like sentinels, their branches swaying gently in the night breeze, as if whispering secrets long forgotten. Lily? I murmured, the name slipping from my lips like a prayer. We're here for you. As we approached the heart of the park, the laughter halted abruptly, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. A chill breeze swept through, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down my spine. The atmosphere shifted, turning electric with tension. Noah and I exchanged a glance, our fear mirrored in each other's eyes. What do we do now? Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Let's just call out to her. Maybe she can hear us. I suggested, my heart pounding in my chest. I felt an overwhelming urge to connect with the spirit of the girl whose laughter haunted this place. "Lily!" I shouted into the darkness, my voice trembling. "If you can hear us, we're here to help you. Please, show us what we need to do." At first, there was nothing but silence. The trees seemed to lean in closer, as if waiting with bated breath. Then, slowly, a figure began to materialize before us. The air shimmered, and I felt a pull, as though the very fabric of reality was bending to reveal something beyond our comprehension. "Noah!" I breathed, awestruck and terrified as a translucent form began to take shape. The figure coalesced into the form of a young girl, her features delicate and ethereal. She wore a simple dress that floated around her like mist, and her hair cascaded around her shoulders in soft waves. "Lily!" I ventured, my voice barely a whisper. "Yes," the girl spoke, her voice a melodic echo that sent shivers down my spine. "Why are you here? We want to understand," I said, stepping forward, drawn to her by an invisible thread. "We want to help you." Lily's expression was a mix of sadness and confusion. "Help?" she repeated, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "No one can help me. They all forget." "No, we won't forget," Noah interjected, his voice steady now. "We're here to uncover the truth. We know about the disappearances, about the laughter. We want to know what happened to you." As Noah spoke, the atmosphere changed again. The air grew heavier, charged with emotion. Lily's gaze flickered between us, and I could see a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You must understand," she began, her voice trembling. "The laughter, it's a part of me. It binds me to this place. I heard it the night I disappeared, and it was the last thing I remember before everything went dark." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "What happened that night?" Lily's expression turned somber, and she glanced away, as if trying to relive a memory that was too painful. "I was playing with my friends in the park. We were laughing, running around, but then I heard it. The laughter changed. It wasn't ours anymore. It was darker, felt wrong." Noah and I exchanged glances, our hearts pounding in our chests. "What happened next?" I pressed gently. "I followed it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought it would lead me to something fun, something magical. But it led me to the old well, and I fell in." Tears streamed down her translucent cheeks, shimmering in the moonlight. "I couldn't escape. The laughter, it trapped me." "No!" I exclaimed, feeling the weight of her words press down on me. "But we're here now, Lily. We can help you find peace. We can break the cycle." The girl looked at me, hope flickering in her eyes. "You don't understand. The laughter, it's a part of a pact. To keep the town safe, to keep the darkness at bay. But it has to be fed." "Fed?" Noah echoed, his voice rising in alarm. "What does that mean?" Lily's gaze turned distant, as if she were looking through us, through time itself. "They believe that by sacrificing a child, they can appease the spirit. But it's a lie. The darkness only grows stronger, feeding off the fear and pain." A wave of realization crashed over me. The disappearances, the stories we've heard, they've been feeding the darkness all along. But how can we stop it? How can we free you? Lily's form shimmered, and I could see the anguish etched into her delicate features. "You must confront the truth of what happened. The ones who made the pact, they must be held accountable. You must break the cycle." "Noah!" I turned to him, my heart racing. "We have to go back and confront them. We have to expose the truth." "Yes," Noah agreed, his eyes blazing with determination. "But what if they try to stop us? They'll do anything to protect their secret." Lily nodded, her expression grave. "You must be careful. The laughter may come for you, but it cannot harm you if you stand united. Remember, the truth is stronger than the darkness." As she spoke, the laughter returned, echoing through the trees, sharper and more menacing than before. It swirled around us, a cacophony of sound that filled the air with dread. "No!" I shouted, clenching my fists. We won't let you control us. We're not afraid." The laughter paused, as if taken aback. The air grew still and Lily's eyes widened. "You have to go now. They'll be looking for you. You must expose the truth before it's too late." "Wait," I cried, desperate. "What if we need your help? What if we can't do it alone?" But before I could finish, the figure of Lily began to fade, her form dissolving into the night air. "Believe in your strength," she whispered, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "I will always be with you." "No!" I shouted again, reaching out to grasp her hand, but my fingers closed around nothingness. The laughter surged, louder now, a sinister chorus that filled the park with dread. "Run!" Noah shouted, pulling me away from where Lily had stood. We sprinted through the trees, the laughter echoing behind us, growing more frenzied. I could feel the darkness closing in, pressing against my back, urging us to flee. "Keep going," Noah urged, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "We have to get out of here." We burst into the clearing where the park's entrance loomed, the streetlights flickering like dying stars. But just as we reached the edge, I felt a cold breeze wrap around me, and the laughter morphed into a piercing scream that echoed through the night. I turned back, my heart pounding. The shadows writhed, coalescing into forms that seemed to reach for us, their faces twisted in rage. "Noah!" I yelled, feeling panic rise within me. "We can't let them catch us." We raced away from the park, our hearts pounding in unison. The laughter echoed behind us, a haunting reminder of the darkness we were determined to confront. As we stumbled into the safety of the streetlights, I knew we had to expose the truth, to break the cycle once and for all. But as the laughter faded into the distance, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the darkness was still lurking. The air was thick with tension as I stood in the moonlit park, the flickering shadows dancing around me, fueled by the distant echoes of laughter. Noah was by my side, his face pale in the ethereal glow. We had come to confront the spirit that had haunted this town for so long, the spirit of Lily, the little girl who had vanished without a trace. The weight of the diary in my pocket felt heavier than ever, as if it held the secrets of the town in its fragile pages. "Are you ready for this?" Noah asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced around, as if expecting the townsfolk to leap out from the shadows at any moment. I nodded, but uncertainty gnawed at me. "We have to face her, Noah. We can't let this continue. We have to understand the truth behind the pact." As if in response to our resolve, the laughter echoed again, clearer this time, more haunting. It was a sound that sent chills racing up my spine, a reminder of the innocence lost and the darkness that surrounded it. "Do you think she'll even listen to us?" Noah asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "I hope so," I replied, though the truth was I had no idea what awaited us. The stories, the rumors, the warnings, they swirled in my mind, taunting me with their implications. We were intruders in a world that had long since forgotten how to trust. As we stepped deeper into the park, the laughter shifted to something darker, more sinister. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The trees loomed overhead, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, and the moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy. Then, as if pulled from the very fabric of the shadows, a figure began to materialize in front of us. My heart raced. There she was, Lily. She looked as I had imagined, a small girl with golden hair and wide, sorrowful eyes. But there was something unsettling about her presence. She glowed with an otherworldly light, yet her expression was one of pain and anger. "Why have you come here?" Lily's voice was soft but laced with an intensity that sent a shiver through me. "You shouldn't be here. We need to talk to you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We want to understand what happened to you, to help you." Her laughter echoed again, but it was no longer innocent. It was filled with frustration. "Help me? You think you can help me?" She stepped forward, and I could feel the coldness radiating from her. "You're just like the others. You think you can change things, but you can't." "No," Noah interjected, stepping closer. "We're not like them. We know about the pact. We know you're trapped because of it. At the mention of the pact, her expression shifted, a flicker of hope in her eyes. You know about the pact? The one they made to keep me quiet. Tell us everything, I urged, my heart pounding in my chest. We need to know the truth. Lily's form flickered, and for a moment, I thought she might disappear. The pact was made to cover up what really happened to me. They didn't want anyone to know the truth, what really happened that night. Her voice trembled, and I could sense the pain behind her words. What do you mean? Noah pressed. What truth? The truth is that I didn't just disappear. They took me. The adults in this town, they were afraid of what I knew. I saw things I shouldn't have seen. Tears welled in her eyes, glistening like dew under the moonlight. They thought if they silenced me, they could keep their secrets safe. But I'm still here, trapped between worlds, and every time they laugh, it's like they're mocking my pain. Who took you, Lily? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Who are the real culprits? She hesitated, looking around as if the trees themselves might be listening. I can't say their names. They're still here, watching, waiting. But I can tell you this, the laughter you hear is a warning. It's a sign of what will happen if you don't break the pact. They will take another and another, until the town is nothing but a graveyard of secrets. A cold breeze swept through the park, and I shivered. What do we need to do? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. How can we set you free? The key you have, she said, pointing towards my pocket. It's not just a key, it's a piece of the truth. You must confront them, the ones who made the pact. They hold the answers. Noah's brow furrowed, realization dawning. The townsfolk, they know more than they're letting on. They're protecting their own interests at your expense. Lily nodded, her expression shifting to one of determination. You must expose them, but be careful. The past is a powerful thing. It will fight back. As I stood there, grappling with the weight of her words, a shadow flickered through the trees. My heart raced. What do you mean by fight back? Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. The laughter transformed into a cacophony of screams, the air thick with unease. The shadows around us seemed to pulse, alive with a malevolent energy. No, Lily cried, her form flickering. They're coming. You must go. You can't stay here. Lily, wait, I shouted, reaching out to her. We can help you. We can end this. But she was already retreating into the darkness, her voice echoing hauntingly. Break the pact. Break the silence. Only then will I be free. The shadows deepened, and an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. The laughter turned into a chorus of mocking voices, the trees groaning as if they were in pain. Noah, we need to leave, I shouted, grabbing his arm. Now! We turned to run, but the shadows felt like they were closing in around us. I could hear the whispers of the townsfolk, carried on the wind, warning us to stay away. The laughter echoed behind us, twisting into something sinister. Do you think she'll be all right? Noah asked, panic rising in his voice as we stumbled through the underbrush. I don't know, I replied, my breath coming in short gasps. But we can't let her sacrifice be in vain. We have to confront the people of this town. They need to know what they've done. As we burst through the trees and back onto the path, the moonlight illuminated our way. But the laughter followed us, a reminder of the darkness that still lingered in Maplewood. Do you really think they'll listen? Noah asked, his voice trembling with uncertainty. They have to, I said, determination flooding through me. If we stand together and expose the truth, maybe we can break this cycle. Maybe we can finally set her free. The weight of the past loomed over us, but I felt a spark of hope ignite within. We were no longer just two kids caught in a nightmare. We had become the bearers of truth. And truth, no matter how painful, was the only weapon we had against the darkness that threatened to consume us all. As we made our way back towards the heart of Maplewood, a single thought resonated in my mind. The laughter would no longer hold power over us. We were ready to confront the ghosts of the past, to uncover the secrets buried beneath layers of fear and silence. We would break the pact no matter the cost. The storm rolled in with an ominous presence, dark clouds swirling above Maplewood as if mirroring the turmoil in my heart. I stood at the edge of the old park, the very ground where the ritual was supposed to take place, and felt the weight of an impending doom pressing down on me. Noah was beside me, his expression a mix of determination and fear. We had come so far, but it felt as if the city itself was conspiring against us. "Do you think it's too late?" Noah asked, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. He looked around, as if expecting the townspeople to emerge from the shadows, eyes filled with suspicion and anger. "What if we can't stop it?" I shook my head, searching for the right words. "We have to try. If the SRA Thompson is right about the ritual being our only hope." My voice trailed off, the reality of our situation hitting me like a cold wave. The key she had given me felt heavy in my pocket, but I had no idea where it would fit. As the first drops of rain began to fall, I glanced at the makeshift altar we had set up, marked by the scuffed ground and the remnants of the offerings left by previous generations. We can't let them sacrifice another child. We can't let Lily's fate repeat itself. Noah nodded, swallowing hard. But what if the key doesn't fit? What if we can't do anything to help her, or any of them? His eyes were wide, reflecting both the flickering streetlights and the fear that gripped his heart. "We have to believe," I replied, trying to instill a sense of hope into my own wavering resolve. Just then, the wind picked up, whipping around us and sending leaves spiraling into the air. It felt like a warning, an eerie indication that something was about to happen. "Let's start," I said, pulling the diary from my backpack. The pages were worn and yellowed, filled with Lily's handwriting. I flipped through, searching for the passage that had haunted my nights. She mentioned the storm, how it always came before something terrible happened. "It's happening again, Noah." He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Okay, let's do this. We need to follow the instructions exactly." As we stood together, the sounds of the storm intensified. Thunder rumbled overhead, and with each crack, I felt the ground beneath us tremble. I looked at the altar, at the markings that seemed to pulse with energy. "We need to draw the symbols from the diary. It's the only way to connect with her spirit." Noah nodded, pulling a stick from the ground. "I'll start here," he said, crouching down to begin inscribing the first symbol into the dirt. I joined him, our fingers working quickly, tracing the delicate lines that Lily had written about. "Do you think it's enough?" Noah asked, glancing up at me as he finished the last symbol. "What if we didn't do it right? It has to be enough," I replied, my heart racing. "We don't have any other choice." I took the key out of my pocket, its cool metal glinting in the dim light. This has to unlock something. Maybe it will help guide her back, or at least give us a way to communicate. The rain intensified, soaking us to the bone as we finished the last symbol. The air crackled with energy, and I could feel the tension building, the atmosphere thickening around us. Just then, a distant laughter echoed through the park, faint but unmistakable. "Noah, did you hear that?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yeah," he replied, looking around nervously. "It sounds like a child. We have to go deeper," I urged, feeling a pull toward the center of the park where the laughter seemed to emanate from. As we moved forward, the laughter grew louder, more insistent, echoing through the trees. Suddenly, the laughter stopped, replaced by a chilling silence. Noah and I exchanged worried glances. "What just happened?" he whispered. "I don't know," I admitted, feeling a knot form in my stomach. "But we need to keep going." We reached the center of the park, and the atmosphere shifted. It was as if time had slowed down, the world around us fading away. I took a deep breath, clutching the diary and the key tightly. "This is it, Noah. We have to call her spirit. We need her to know we're here to help." He nodded, his expression serious. "On three, then." "On three," I confirmed, my heart racing as I prepared myself for what was to come. 1, 2, 3. We shouted in unison, our voices echoing through the park. Lily, we're here. We want to help you. For a moment, nothing happened. The rain continued to pour, and the world around us felt eerily still. Just as doubt began to creep into my mind, the atmosphere shifted again. A cold wind swept through the park, sending chills down my spine. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a flicker of movement. A figure began to materialize, shimmering in the rain-soaked air. I felt my breath catch in my throat. Noah, look! The figure solidified into the form of a small girl, her hair long and tangled, her eyes wide and filled with sadness. You called me? Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Lily? I breathed, feeling tears well up in my eyes. We're here to help you. We know what happened. We want to break the cycle. Her expression shifted, a mixture of hope and despair. You shouldn't have come. It's too late for me. No, it's not, Noah interjected, stepping forward. We can help you. We just need to understand what happened, what the town did. Lily's gaze drifted to the ground, and the sadness deepened in her eyes. The town made a deal, she said. They thought it would protect them. They didn't care about me. They just wanted to be safe. Safe from what? I asked, my heart racing. What did they do to you? I was taken because of the pact, she whispered, her voice trembling. They thought they could silence me, but I'm still here. I can't rest until the truth is known. What truth? Noah pressed. We need to know how to help you. Lily looked at us, her eyes pleading. You must break the pact, but it requires a sacrifice. Not just any sacrifice, but the truth. You have to reveal what the town did. Only then can I be free. The weight of her words hit me like a physical blow. But the townspeople, they're afraid. They think they can keep me quiet by hiding the truth, she said, her voice growing stronger. But it's a lie. They took me and they took others like me. Noah stepped closer, his determination shining through. We'll reveal everything. We'll tell everyone what really happened. But how? I asked, feeling the gravity of the situation. We're just two people against a whole town. They'll never listen. You have to use the key, Lily instructed, pointing at the old medal in my hand. It opens the way to the truth. You must confront the spirit of the pact. Only then will they know what they've done. I looked at the key, feeling its power thrumming in my palm. But where do we go? Follow the laughter, she whispered, her form beginning to fade. It will guide you, but you must hurry. The storm is growing stronger. No, wait, I cried out, reaching for her. We can't lose you again. Remember, the truth will set you free, she said, her voice echoing through the rain as she vanished into the mist. Noah and I stood in stunned silence, the weight of her words settling heavily on our shoulders. We have to go back, he said, determination hardening his features. We need to show the townspeople what really happened. As we turned to leave the park, the laughter returned, this time ringing out like a warning. It felt like a challenge, urging us to confront the townspeople and reveal everything we had learned. Are you ready? I asked, my heart racing as I clutched the diary and the key. I have to be, Noah replied, his voice steady. For Lily, for all of them. Together, we stepped into the storm, knowing that the truth was our only weapon, and that we had to face whatever awaited us in Maplewood. The storm brewed ominously overhead, dark clouds swirling like a tempestuous sea, casting a shadow over Maplewood that seemed to reflect the turmoil in my heart. I stood in the abandoned park where the ritual was supposed to take place, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Noah was beside me, his face pale and drawn, eyes wide with a mix of fear and resolve. The air was thick with tension, and I could almost hear the distant echoes of the laughter that had haunted us since our arrival. But now it felt different, more sinister, as if the laughter had transformed into something darker. Are you sure about this? Noah's voice trembled slightly, but I could see the determination behind his fear. It was as if he was trying to convince himself as much as me. I don't know if we have a choice, Noah. We have to confront this. If we don't, Who knows what will happen to the town? I replied, my heart racing as I glanced around the park. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, and the wind whispered through the leaves, carrying the echoes of the past. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Noah was the son of Mrs. Thompson, the woman who had been our reluctant guide through the tangled history of Maplewood. The weight of that knowledge crushed me. Noah, I started, my voice barely a whisper. There's something I need to tell you. No, don't. He interrupted, shaking his head. Not now. We need to focus on the spirit. We can't let it consume us. Or worse, let it take someone else. The desperation in his voice cut through the cold air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. But I had to tell him the truth. I had to warn him about the role he was destined to play in this grotesque tragedy. You don't understand. I pressed on, urgency rising within me. I think you're... A sudden clap of thunder silenced me, and the ground trembled beneath our feet, as if the earth itself was warning us against what was to come. Let's just find a way to stop this, Noah said, his voice steady now, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He was grappling with the reality of what we faced and the weight of our shared history. We can't let them sacrifice anyone else. As we moved deeper into the park, the laughter grew louder, echoing around us like a twisted melody. It was as if the spirits of the children long lost were taunting us, reminding us of our failures to save them. I glanced at Noah, and for a brief moment, I saw the boy he had been before this nightmare had begun. A boy filled with hope and laughter. But that boy felt like a ghost now, overshadowed by the reality we faced. We'll figure this out, I assured him, though my own heart was heavy with doubt. We just need to find the right way to confront the spirit. The diary mentioned something about a connection, a way to reach her. Noah nodded, but I could see the turmoil in his eyes. What if she doesn't want to listen? What if she's angry? We're asking her to forgive us for something we didn't even do. His voice cracked, and I felt a surge of empathy for him. The weight of our predicament was almost unbearable. As we approached the clearing where the ritual was supposed to take place, a figure emerged from the shadows, Mrs. Thompson. She looked older than I remembered, her face drawn and weary, as if the burdens of the past had aged her beyond her years. "Why are you here?" she demanded, her voice a mixture of desperation and anger. "You shouldn't have come back. You don't understand what's at stake." "No, you don't understand," I shot back, frustration boiling over. "You're the one keeping this cycle of pain alive. We can't let it continue. You need to help us, not hinder us." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You think you can just waltz in here and change everything? You don't know the truth. You don't know what you're asking for." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Then tell us, what is the truth? You've been hiding it for too long." "The truth?" She laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "The truth is, this town is cursed. It always has been. The pact was meant to protect us, but it's a lie. The spirit demands a sacrifice to keep the peace. It always has. And if you try to break it, you'll unleash a darkness that no one can contain." Noah stepped forward, his voice firm. "We won't let you sacrifice anyone else. We won't let you use another child to keep your secret safe. It ends here." "Do you even know what that means?" Mrs. Thompson's voice trembled with a mix of rage and fear. "You think you can just defy the spirit? You think you can confront the past without consequences?" Before I could respond, the wind howled through the trees, and the laughter crescendoed, wrapping around us like a suffocating blanket. It was then that I saw her. A figure ethereal and glowing emerged from the shadows. The child's face was a mixture of innocence and sorrow, her eyes filled with a deep, haunting sadness. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice a soft echo that resonated in my bones. "Do you seek to free me or bind me further?" "No, we're here to help you," I said, stepping forward despite the terror that gripped me. "We want to stop the cycle of pain. We know about the pact. We want to break it." Her gaze flickered to Noah, and for a moment I saw recognition. You are one of them, the child of the Keeper of Secrets." Noah's face paled, and he stepped back, the realization hitting him like a wave. What do you mean? Your mother has kept the truth hidden. The spirit spoke, her voice heavy with sorrow. She is bound to this place, just as I am. The pact was made to silence the truth, to prevent the guilt from consuming the living. But it comes at a terrible cost. Stop this, Mrs. Thompson shouted, but her voice was drowned out by the rising wind. You don't know what you're doing. You'll destroy us all. No, the spirit replied, her voice steady and calm. They seek to break the chains, to let the truth flow free. It is the only way to find peace. Peace, Mrs. Thompson scoffed, but her voice wavered. You think this will bring peace? It will bring chaos and despair. I can't let you sacrifice anyone else, Noah said, determination igniting within him. I won't allow it to happen. What do you think you can do? Mrs. Thompson spat, desperation creeping into her voice. You're just a child. You can't stand against the spirit. Maybe I can, Noah replied, stepping forward, his hands shaking but his resolve unwavering. Maybe I can end this, end the pain. Before I could stop him, he reached out toward the spirit, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and bravery. What do I need to do? He asked, his voice steady. The spirit's expression softened. You must face the truth of your lineage. Only then can the cycle be broken. Noah, wait! I shouted, but it was too late. The air crackled with energy as he stepped closer, drawn to the spirit like a moth to a flame. As he reached out, the wind howled, and the laughter morphed into a cacophony of screams. The ground shook beneath us, and I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me, threatening to swallow me whole. Noah! I cried, but my voice was lost in the storm. He stood before the spirit, eyes locked onto hers, and I could see the fear in his expression. Do it, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I'm ready. No, Mrs. Thompson screamed, lunging toward him, but the spirit raised a hand, halting her in her tracks. It is his choice, the spirit declared, her voice echoing through the chaos. The truth cannot be obscured any longer. I can't let you do this, Mrs. Thompson shouted, tears streaming down her face. You're my son, and I won't be a pawn in this game anymore, Noah replied, his voice firm. I choose to break the cycle. The air filled with a blinding light, and the laughter erupted into a piercing wail. I felt a force pulling at me, ripping me away from the moment. The world around us blurred, and I could see the dark shadows of the past rising to claim their due. Noah! I screamed, reaching out for him as the ground trembled violently. But it was too late. The spirit and Noah were enveloped in a blinding flash, and as the light faded, all that remained was silence. The storm dissipated, leaving a heavy stillness in its wake. I stumbled back, breathless, as the reality of what had just happened crashed down on me. Mrs. Thompson fell to her knees, her body racked with sobs. No, no, what have I done? She cried, her voice breaking. I felt the tears streaming down my face, the weight of loss and despair consuming me. We were so close, I whispered.